Welcome to SapphireOne. This is an introduction on entering a vendor payment into SapphireOne. If we select the accounts mode, and by selecting the accounts mode, it will bring our drop-down template on the left-hand side here, or palette. If we go into the palette and we select payables, in the data entry screen we go and select vendor payment. By selecting the vendor payment, it will bring up a vendor payment screen. In this case, I'm going to enter a vendor ID, and I've typed A@. Now, by typing A@, it's brought up a sublist of all the vendors that start with A. I've gone and selected AJ White & Son. Here I'm going to go and enter a particular amount, so I enter $7,700 here. And in this case, I do know the invoice number that I'm paying, so it's 1229. And I'll go and say I've finalised the payment. Now, I've got the ability to change the date if I wish. In this case, I won't change the date. I also can change the period number by selecting that and selecting a different period if I wish to. And then I can set, if I wanted to, standing transaction. So if it was a recurring payment, I could set that to recur monthly, 30 days, fortnightly, weekly, yearly, or other being any number of days that you select. In this case, we'll select none. By green ticking that now, that will save that particular record and ask me to go and allocate it. In this case, there's a vendor invoice in there for that exact amount, and it just happens to be the correct invoice number, 1229, which is the invoice we intended to pay, and we green tick that now, and the vendor payment is complete. If I go into the transaction inquiry, we can go and look at that vendor payment, and we can go and look at that again. In this case, it's unallocated, it's unposted, and it is allocated. So if we click on the allocation screen, we can see the particular vendor invoice that's been allocated to. So that's an introduction to entering a vendor payment into SapphireOne. There's two ways we can get a vendor payment. We can go to the palette here. Alternatively, we can go to our data entry drop down here, and we can select vendor payment on the drop down list here. So it's exactly the same screen. So if we just quickly run through that again, this time I've brought up all my vendors, and we'll pay a different amount this time. We'll pay $110. So it's exactly the same, and we can hit payment finalised there, and we can green tick that, and it'll bring up an allocation screen. In this case, I'll just allocate it to the oldest vendor invoice on the list. So two distinct ways we can do a vendor payment. We can go to payables, we can select a vendor payment from here. Alternatively, we can come up to the palette drop down, and we can select the vendor payment from here as well. So we've got two distinct ways that we can get at that vendor payment. And once we've entered that, we can access that from the transaction inquiry. So here we go, we can go back to those two vendor payments. In this case, I'll select both, and we'll show subset. So that's Control-G, which is the keyboard shortcut, and I can go back in and look at that vendor payment. Alternatively, we could select both those vendor payments, and I could double click on them. We go select both, modify, and then I can go in and modify both those, and I've got my forward arrow here so I can quickly go through that. But we'll explain that in more detail in our vendor transaction inquiry video. Thank you for taking the time to watch entering a vendor payment, SapphireOne.